and welcome back to another episode of Gay As in Stupid. We're your hosts. I'm Isaac.
I'm Erin.
And we're gay and really fucking stupid.
Just the most idiotic homosexuals.
Fucking bewilderingly dumb. This month's episode, we're going to be talking about LGBT artists, because honestly, art's better when it's gay or like trans.
Yeah. So we're gonna be talking about that and like how artists like identity as LGBT people can influence their work and can influence the way that we as LGBT people view that work. Or listen to it or read it or watch it.
Consume. For a catch-all.
Devour.
I just go
how we vor it. It can influence how we vor it.
Hey everybody, the Gay As Stupid podcast is officially canceled. This is it. So like jumping right into it, throughout history there have been a lot of LGBT artists, and a lot of them are lost because of the way we like keep history. And Erin and I talk a lot about like inaccurate history keeping, for accounts of like LGBT people and all like the history we lost because of like homophobia and heteronormativity and dumbass motherfucking historians. And I think in the case of LGBT artists, there's one person who really sticks out in terms of like that censorship and stuff, and that's Langston Hughes. For those of you who don't know, Langston Hughes played a big part in the Harlem Renaissance. He was like a poet and he wrote plays and essays, but he's most well known for his poetry and stuff like that. And so Langston Hughes was super inspired by James Baldwin, who was like an openly gay black man. I almost just said openly black gay man, but stupid hours this morning.
Isn't it always?
But
Isn't Stupid Podcast?
Fuck you. But and forever Langston Hughes' sexuality was kind of like debated like academically and in like social circles because like he never addressed it. But like throughout reading like his works, it's very apparent that like he loved black men, specifically because he had a lot of like unaddressed, or like the person it was addressed to wasn't found out, but like to an unnamed black man who he was in love with. And that's like pretty like, oh, gay, you know, like you see that like he wrote love letters.
Yeah.
And he also published works in Fire magazine, which was like a gay magazine during the Harlem Renaissance. And only like did one issue, and I think their office actually like burnt down in a fire, which is kind of ironic. I might be wrong on that. I might just be like imagining that because it would be really whack, but yeah. But still, even with like that, like pretty like, oh yeah, that's a gay man writing about men, like we do like in general when we see love letters to men. The debate was still up.
Does he love him like a brother? Is this brotherly love? Is this friendship? Oh my god, you guys! It's friendship. It's the truest bromance we've ever seen in our lives. Oh my god, guys were so much more like expressive back then. Like, don't you wish that we could free the straight men to express their sexuality now without them having to worry about being called gay?
So then a documentary came out about Langston Hughes called Looking for Langston, and it was like the first like thing like about Langston Hughes that like very like aggressively and openly called him a homosexual. Like it was very explicit in having like gay men and like him like engaging in like with other men in a non-platonic way.
Did they do this in like a positive way or like?
Yes, it wasn't a positive. Like the director was like, he's gay. Amazing. Like it was the first thing that like explained being gay. It wasn't like, oh, bad or anything. Like
amazing. I want to see that.
Yeah. But the thing about that is there's this guy Bass, who he kind of had the claim over Langston Hughes and his public image. And because Langston Hughes is dead, and he was like, since Langston Hughes is dead, it's up to me to like keep a good image of him after his death. And like I'm trying to protect the wishes of Langston Hughes. And his response to like that movie was block the film. And like he is like, I think Langston Hughes is an inappropriate metaphor because Langston was so private. I think this is a violation of his person. And he basically forbid anybody who was using his like text or anything, or like his image, his name, from claiming he was gay for a very long time. So like if you were trying to like read something, or like you were like using his work, or like you wanted to like literally use him for anything, like if you mentioned he was gay, your work would be like blocked by this guy who was claiming like I'm just respecting his like image because like the sexuality of black icons is deemed inappropriate for public discussion. And like he wasn't gay, and like this is what he would have wanted, which is like fucked up.
That's so fucked up. That's like even more fucked up than what usually happens, which is like, you know, that these people are gay or are trans, and then everyone else just like denies it after their death. Like this is worse.
Yeah. Like this man's just straight up going like, oh, you're gonna acknowledge he was a homosexual, and like lifts a gun to like the person and is like, think about it again. Like,
oh, that's so shitty. Especially because like
it is.
It always seems like when you like read about these people, like it seems like acknowledging that now is like, I always feel like that's what I would have wanted, you know, if I was living in a time where I couldn't be like openly gay in my work. You know, like I would have wanted to have that acknowledged at a time when people could. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I once had a conversation with somebody, and somehow we were talking about Oscar Wilde, and I shit you not, when I like mentioned he was gay, this person went, he's not?
What?
And I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm sorry. There's a lot of people I can like excuse for you not knowing are gay, but Oscar Wilde?
Oscar Wilde? Hello? Oh my god.
One of the sloppiest and dumbest homosexuals ever to walk this earth.
If you want to know how gay Oscar Wilde is so gay that Dorian Gray is the heterosexualized version. The version we have is the heterosexualized version because his publisher was like, "Oh, you know what? This is too gay. This is too gay. You have to make it less gay." Oscar Wilde is so gay that since the age of 9, I have imitated him in my style. And every time I wear a particularly gay outfit, my mom is like, "Oh wow, that's kind of like Oscar Wilde-ish, don't you think?" That's how gay Oscar Wilde is.
Oscar Wilde so openly fucked men to the point where it like bit him in the ass.
Yeah.
Like, please, he was so stupid when it came to being like quiet about it. He's like, oh, I could get in trouble. I should just scream it.
The fathers of the twinks that he was fucking would come and confront him about it, and he had a revolver, and he would, you know, be there with his like boyfriend, and the dad would come running in, and he'd like stand up, and he was like 6 feet tall, and he'd stand up and pull out his revolver and be like, "Want to try something? Want to try something?"
There's another beloved LGBT artist. Did you have anyone you wanted to talk about?
Honestly, for me, I don't have a lot of like visual art has never really been my thing, except when I'm like dating a visual artist, which all 3 of my boyfriends have been. Fuck.
Yikes.
I know, but I was always really into like, when I was into like art historically, it was always like literature, because I'm a nerd. And I really like, I've talked about him here before, but I've always like, I've really admired like E.M. Forster's writing, and
Real quick, I thought you were about to say Cleve Jones, and I was gonna book a flight immediately to
my
come
favorite
beat the
artist.
shit out of
He's a
you.
great writer, though. I mean, like, I wouldn't call him an
He is.
artist because that's not like his like thing, but he's a great writer. He has
All right,
such a
continue.
soul, hot soul. Anyway, yeah. So I've just always really admired him, and reading about like his struggle with his sexuality and stuff. Like, I don't think he like slept with a man until he was like in his 40s, late 30s maybe. And after that, he basically was like, it did so much for him. He basically was like, I don't want to write stories anymore unless they have gay people in them, unless they have gay love in them. And so I think he published at least one book after that, but most of his writing that we have is before that point in his life. And there are tons of like people, heterosexuals, who are like, oh, well, having sex totally like robbed him of his creativity. Suddenly he was a homo and then he wasn't a good author anymore. But what really happened is that he was writing, and we know that he was writing because we have it documented in his own words, basically, and in correspondence with friends and stuff. And he was doing a lot of writing, except that he was just burning most of it because it was very like self-incriminating because it was gay as shit. So we don't have most of his writing after that point. But we do have the book Morris, which I've also probably talked about at some point.
Good book.
It's a good fucking book. And he wrote it because he wanted to have, at least in fiction, a scenario where two men were allowed to fall in love and to stay in love, and nothing bad would happen to them for it. And he was really the main relationship, like the end game relationship in that book. I read he was really inspired by the relationship of two of his friends who were gay. And he like went over to their house and was like really gay for both of them. And he was like, wow, this is what love is. And he thought that their relationship was really beautiful. And so he wrote the like endgame relationship kind of inspired by them. And I remember reading that and just being like, this is so sweet. This is like gay love in its purest form. I don't know. So that's a big inspiration to me. And also like, I think there's a difference between, for me at least, between like gay and trans art as a gay trans person.
Yeah, I would say it's the same for me as
Yeah,
well.
like I need, like when I see gay art, when I consume gay art, I feel very comforted and I feel very like uplifted in a way. And when I consume trans art, it's like I need to be here right now. I need to see this content or else I will fucking die. Like it's so cathartic, and like when it's done right, like it just kind of like opens up this space in me. And like I don't know, it's very raw for me. And I actually don't have a lot of historical artists that I feel like really do that, because anything that was trans was so like hidden in the past, and a lot of us couldn't make our own work. So there are a lot of trans people actually that were performers, historically, which is pretty easy to find evidence of. But there's not a lot of cases of us like making our own art that is like known and that is open to the general public.
When art's made by a gay or trans person, and like when their identity shows through their work, it's just always really like powerful and uplifting to me to like see them being like so bold with like their identity and like putting it out there, because like I know like it took me so long to be comfortable with like even like in a personal way putting it out there. Like I can't imagine like on the daily putting my identity out there, like this is like my drive, this is what I am. And
Yeah. definitely.
I think an artist that does a really good job and like that I personally like really loved, like puts his identity like fully into his art, like that's like his drive for his art and like it's apparent in all of it, is Keith Haring.
Yes.
For like if somehow you don't know, which I find it hard to believe that anybody does not know who he is because he's just that popular. Which is insane how far his reach is because he was only an active artist in the public eye for like 10 years.
I think there are like this
But
headies that that know him, but they don't like. They're like, that's a heterosexual, right? That's one of us.
Insane. I don't understand how anyone could think that, but his art was directly intertwined with his like activism. Like it started with him like doing like small activistic things and like chalking subways, which is like illegal, and that's how he like started gaining like momentum. And like he used his art to like protest things like nuclear warfare, the apartheid. His art advocated for children's rights, and he talked about like just a lot of different things that he's passionate about, and he used his art as a platform to reach like the public. Like he would use like popular symbols like money, and I think like a lot of the times dogs, so that like even like children and like the common person, like when they saw it they could like kind of put things together. And he made it his art like explicitly accessible. Like he always made sure it was like in public spaces, like especially once like the prices for his art started like skyrocketing, he was like, I need to go back to like painting things in public and drawing things in public and all that stuff, so like it's out there for like everyone to see, because like that was his whole thing. And his art really like gets intense when you look into his like AIDS activism art. Like he made like a lot of safe sex like art, like depicting like giant cocks with faces holding a condom being like safe sex, or people jerking each other off like safe sex and stuff like that. And like yeah, like those are like good and like funny, I guess, because cocks are just funny to look at. But like that's just like base level stuff. Keith Haring died of AIDS, I believe, in like 1989.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it was around then. He was only like 31, and a lot of his art leading up to his death was very heavy on the talk of no, he might have died in 1990, but around that time, 19, oh my god. Anyways, around then, like in 1995, which was 3 years before his diagnosis. Did I do math right? Yeah. 3 years before his diagnosis of HIV/AIDS, Keith Haring made this unentitled self-portrait where he covered his face with red spots already, and he hadn't even been diagnosed yet, because he had already lost so many of his like friends to the disease. So when he was talking about it, he said, I'm living as if it was already a reality. OMG, don't. It's okay.
I think that what I'm going to...
So you can see that outside of even his activism, even though like I would consider it, that self-portrait depicting himself with AIDS is a form of activism, but
definitely
it's a different type than just like the jerking off, safe sex kind of stuff, you know? You can see how deeply his identity as a gay man like affected his art, because like it was so important to him, and like it was just what he used as his outlet, and it was like so public. Like he basically like, even if people like saw that, they just go, oh, he already has it. Like that was such like a statement, in my opinion, like to be like, have not been diagnosed, but I'm just living like this anyways, because like he was so connected to his community, and like it was like solidarity.
And it's kind of like You know, if one of us feels it, then we all feel it. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was trying to say, but I could not think of any of those fucking words. Thank you, Aaron.
Anytime.
Some of my favorite pieces by Keith Haring, he does a lot of the ignorance equals fear, silence equals death, where he has like figures covering their eyes, ears, and mouth. Some of them he made for ACT UP, I believe, but some of them he didn't. Like, there's one that's super popular where it is a pink triangle and it's filled with figures who are all covering like their ears, eyes, and mouth. And it's another like part of like the silence equals death. And he made a lot of pieces with that sentiment, which I think still holds today, because I know throughout all activism, staying silent isn't helpful. It is.
You can't like wait for things to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a neutral act. It is directly like against whatever
Plus,
it
like,
is.
you have to like demand everything immediately to get something eventually. Cleve Jones said that, but I agree with him. It's sentiments that
Oh God! You just want to fuck this old man.
I'm so sorry.
Want to fuck this old twink?
Stop! Don't do this to me. Yeah, they had a like a display of Keith Haring's art at the William Way Community Center, which is in my city, Philadelphia, and they had that up for a while, so I got a chance to really look at some of his stuff. A lot of the things that they had up were pieces that he did in relation to like AIDS activism and stuff. And I think that his art is just so amazing, and how he has like a lot of it. It's composed of a lot of like very simplistic pieces that like come together to be like extremely expressive and extremely emotional.
The final thing I'll like say about like the last thing I'll bring up about like Keith Haring is one that like personally, like, I don't know, it gives me an emotion that I don't necessarily have words to describe when I like think about this, but the last painting Keith Haring made before he died was called An Unfinished Painting. And a lot of people overlook this, and they just are like, it was supposed to be a self-portrait. He knew he wouldn't have like enough time. And so like that, it's like, oh, that's sad, but like people overlook the like what's behind that painting. And he knew he wouldn't be able to finish this painting because he knew he was dying of HIV/AIDS, and he was using this final piece that people would like look at and be like, oh, this is so tragic. Like, too soon they would see that the AIDS crisis and the lack of action on like the government's part to like help people with HIV/AIDS stole his future from him, stole any art he could have put into the world later on. They stole that from him. And I think it's really important to note that, because like, again, like, it's sad when you just go like, oh, he died and couldn't finish it, but then like you're like, this was his final act of activism, and it was to show like, this is because the government failed us, and us being gay men, people with HIV/AIDS. And it's like him saying, I'm dying and they did nothing about this, and this is your fault, and you took everything from me. The
significance is really like really powerful and really amazing.
Pour one out for Keith Haring. Yeehaw.
So for this episode, we reached out to some different artists in the community that we know to get some like statements from them, to get some thoughts from them about how their identities influence their work as an artist and how it influences like their process as an artist. Mostly Isaac did this because I don't know a lot of people, but I've read the statements, and they're so beautiful and they're so amazing. So a big thank you to everyone that contributed to this episode, and we love you.
Anyways, back to what's important. Yeah, so we reached out to some like poets, visual artists, and we even have somebody who does create music and stuff like that, and kind of just ask them how they feel their LGBT identity affects their art in its form or its subject matter. And we did get some amazing responses, and they're so thoughtful, and I'm very thankful that everyone was so willing to help us out, especially because the holiday threw us off our usual schedule. But we also asked them to record them saying like their main point or like the first couple sentences and of like their quote, and their full quotes will be in this month's like Tumblr post for the episode, and so will all their like social media, so definitely go check
Or
that shit out.
else, if you like having recaps, then like.
But yeah, so and then we just kind of compiled all their recorded statements into a audio clip, so that we can highlight their specific voices, because we thought that'd be cool, and then you don't have to hear me and Aaron read like 8 or 10 quotes to you out loud. So here's some cool artists.
My identity as a bisexual woman influences my art in many ways. As a woman, I create art about the issues that affect me, such as abortion and gender equality, in order to resonate with the people that matter the most to me. As a bisexual individual, my subjects often appear from a gaze that falls outside of the stereotypical eye. My figure drawings and portraits all come from a place of admiration, and I'd like to think that they don't fall into the stereotype of the male gaze or the womanly care. They are the space in between, equally sexualized and normalized. I feel lucky to be a bi gal in the art world because it's my own to create in. There are so many other queer artists that I look up to, such as Mabel Thorpe and Warhol, and many female artists I can cite as influence, such as Jenny Holzer, Kiki Smith, and Louise Bourgeois, to name a few. My identity gives me a whole new world of content to draw from and allows my work to resonate with a wider audience. And I really think that any artist's goal is to touch and reach as many people as possible.
My hope is that someday someone reads what I wrote and finds some peace in their own experience.
Well, being transgender, I feel like I'm constantly aware of the lack of representation of my community, and I feel like it might be because of that I tend to experiment with showing all sorts of different types of people in my work, because there's so much diversity in the world. Why not showcase that?
Because if I don't at least attempt to create representation in the field I'm going into, then I can't really complain about the lack of it, right?
I write what matters to me overall, regardless of gender. I try to make my poetry as true as possible. Sometimes when I catch myself over-editing, I try to take myself back to the moment, to the person, and what I loved about him or her.
Much of my recent work has had a focus on the trans body, particularly the sanctity of self-actualization and the godlike power that comes with accepting and creating yourself in the unique and exceptional way that LGBT people must in order to live authentically.
My art form is very influenced by my LGBT identity. I think it is very influenced by my LGBT Black identity. I believe that whenever an artist makes their art, in my case writing music, singing, dancing, performing it, they should incorporate as much of themselves as possible and be true to themselves as much as possible. I think that my LGBT identity also adds a sense of representation as well. I want people like me to listen to my music and to know they aren't alone. So I think that it definitely does come into play. Sometimes I think even more than I think, like I'll be making music, making art, and I won't even realize that my experience, because when you're making music, you're just living your truth, and I won't even realize that my experience is different than someone else's, and that me as a LGBT, just as a gay male, that my my life is significantly different than a lot of other people. So I would say that it's very influenced in my work and in my art form.
It influences me on my motivation to keep creating whenever I listen to, see drawings, watch movies, or see whatever form of artistic expression from LGBT plus artists. It gives me the energy to keep going, to keep creating.
God, I love LGBT artists.
They invented love and
good
beauty
art
and self-expression and like emotions.
God.
I know.
You're so right. Now that you've heard a little bit from some amazingly talented artists within the community, Erin and I are going to give you a little bit of like how we feel our identities affect when we create art. Okie dokie. Go off.
So I do a lot of things like creatively. Mainly I'm an actor. I also do some writing, just like for myself. And I definitely it's definitely much more direct in how my identity influences my writing, because I'll just be like, oh, I love being gay. I love being a history nerd. I'm going to write about some gay people in like the 1940s or something like that, And it's very fun. And then in my nonfiction, I'm like, I'm trans and I'm angry. Hello. And in my acting, I would say for a while now, because I decided that I wanted to be a professional actor just a little bit before I came out, so a little under 3 years ago. And one of my main drives to do that for a while now is because we're very underrepresented in that industry, especially like as a trans person. There aren't a lot of stage actors that I know of who are trans that I can like look up to. And the theater has very, very like restrictive ideas of what like masculinity is and what it looks like, and they're like transphobic, so they don't think that it looks like trans guys, and they don't think that trans people should be on that stage. So I'm a very spiteful person, and I'm like a very like revengeful person. So I decided, like, as soon as I was aware of that, I decided like fuck that. And I really I really want to do something with my life and with what I'm able to do, which is act, that helps other people who are in the position that I'm in now, like when I'm an adult, being able to do something with my career that will help like transgender teenagers who need someone to like look to, that they can be like, oh, that person is doing what they want to do and they're okay and they're happy. So that's one of my main drives for that. It's also a little bit of like a reclamation, like of myself and what is mine, both in my writing and my acting. There's a lot of things that I have to kind of reimagine for myself, because I'm like, oh, that would be so cool to do that. And then I'm like, oh, well, if I did that, it wouldn't be like what I think it would be, and it wouldn't be like how I've read about it, because I'm trans and people would look at me differently and people wouldn't see me for who I am. And so through my art, I can kind of reclaim that, and I can kind of like put myself in these situations and be like, no, I belong here, and I have just as much a right to be here as any of you do. So yeah.
Keep a fucking eye out for this dumbass motherfucker when he hits the stage and makes Broadway his bitch. For me, definitely not as spiteful as Erin. With theater, I know, like professionally, my only goal really is to work for a company that specifically highlights like LGBT stories by LGBT creators. And that's really all that goes behind like who I want to work with as like a lighting person. It's just like I want to contribute to that kind of community that's doing that good for us and allowing us to finally have that platform and like that voice. I know I'm also like very slowly writing a musical about being trans. That'll be fun, but I do write a lot. I'm an award-winning poet. I really can't be bothered to write things that aren't directly involved with my identity. Like any short story I would write for class or anything like that usually was about being gay or had like gay men in it because it was just important to me because I could not retain interest for any fucking thing else. And like my best poetry is all about like loving men or men loving men or like me being trans. And it really helped me come to terms and with like who I was. Like I know like writing poems and then like performing in like slams and talking about being like gay specifically like helped me come to terms with like I do like men because like that was such a struggle for me, and it also helped me kind of be more okay with like my existence pre-transition because I used to be like so angry and hateful towards like the image of what I was, and kind of like working through it and like putting my emotions into these poems, it like gave me the space to like explore my own like emotions and thoughts and like kind of like make peace with them. So like that was no longer eating me up because like that's something I know I needed if I was going to like exist ever again like as a person. But like when it comes to like anything else I do, like it's just kind of like me trying to be like aggressive, I guess. Like they're all high schools, like they'd be like, oh, write something based off this. Like the first assignment I think I turned in my senior year in English in high school, I think was a Javid fanfic that I just changed their names. And then the next thing I turned in was a poem about two men falling in love. And then I turned in a poem about being trans, and I wrote a story about somebody realizing they were trans. And it's like, I went really roundabout ass ways to connect these topics to whatever the prompt was. Because like I needed to like kind of like, hey, we exist. Cause like, and like, we're out here and like, this is me. And like, I just refuse to let people forget that. So like it was like in a very aggressive act towards me of like asserting myself into the spaces I exist and making them known.
I love
you so fucking much.
Aww.
Aww. No homo. That's kind of it for this month's episode. Tasty.
Delicious.
That got kind of weird. Anyways, yeah, we just want to talk about gay and trans people making art, and we wanted to highlight some people in the community because
we love our community.
We love, big love. So do make sure to check out this month's Tumblr post. You can find it at gayasinstupidpodcast on Tumblr because we will have links to their social media and stuff like that. So you can definitely check them out because they're all so talented and amazing. And as well as we'll have their full quotes there as well, kind of like how
and
we
we'll
did
also have all our
review.
like usual crap. So like some links if you're interested in this topic further. We'll have our fiction recommendations for this month and reblog the post if you have a Tumblr.
And then
if you read it, you're legally obligated to reblog it.
But you can, we already plugged our Tumblr, but you can also find us on Twitter as gay as in stupid. We just kind of post updates and stuff like that. Or if you like have an idea or like a recommendation, you can send it like to us on Twitter or Tumblr.
If you have any
check it out.
LGBT artists that you're really into, definitely like send us an ask on Tumblr or at us on Twitter. We want to know. We want to know who they are.
Yes, 100%. And then as per usual, you can find us on SoundCloud, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. one of the 3 places you're listening to this right now. So, want to give a big thank you to all the people who allowed me to last minute ask them for a quote and were so amazing about it and gave me the most amazing responses. And mwah, big
you so
bajillion
much.
thank yous to them. Also, we also want to thank my boyfriend again for intro and outro
And also
song.
an LGBT
He's awesome.
artist.
Oh yes, yeah, he is. He is. Trust me, when he comes out with his album, you guys will know. But yeah, that's it for this month's episode.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw. Yeehaw.